Hi my lovies and welcome back to my channel. I feel like I really needed to wait for Subculture Gate to kind of tone down a little bit before I made this video. However, I feel like if anything it's escalating. I am going to be doing a dupes for the Subculture dupes. I'm trying to find dupes for the Subculture palette. Some shades I found like very spot on. There are epic dupes and even better than the shadows in here because of the quality and stuff like that and the blendability. I have played around with this palette and I'd say maybe 3-4 times I've done different looks with it. I've really gotten stuck in and tried out all of the eyeshadows now at this stage. I still feel the same way that I did the first day that I use it, and I'll link my first impressions of it down below. I don't feel like this is a palette that I can bring away with me because I don't trust the look that I'm gonna get from it. I feel like it's one of those palettes that sometimes it works out quite well for me, and then other days I'm like, wow, that color just didn't work the way it did yesterday. What's going on with my skin today? Or, you know, am I blending it wrong? Or am I applying too much of the eyeshadow, not enough, whatever. So I decided that I would try and find some dupes in my collection because I feel like the shadows in this palette are just insanely gorgeous, bar this shade here, which I hate, Cube. Ugh. So I've come up with 14 shadows that I think are dupes. There's 2 shadows in this entire dupes video that I'm not like mad about, like when it comes to dupes, because I like my dupes to be exactly the same color, like almost exactly the same color. If they're not exactly the same color in a swatch, I like them to be able to be built up to the exact same color, whereas I find the shade that I have for Cube and the shade that I have for Axis are just a bit wishy-washy. So that's all I'm just going to say right now. So these are the shades that I came up with to dupe for the Subculture. Now you can see already, and I explained the 2 shades that I wasn't happy with was Axis and the shade here in the end for Cube, and I'll explain why in a moment. I've spoken about Cube before not being my favorite shadow because of the way that it's pressed. It's pressed quite hard and it's very, very dry. And I understand its presence in the palette, it's supposed to add that extra little purple tinge to the inner corner, because even though it looks white, it has like a pinky purple hue going through it. So you can see that there. Maybe you can't because it's not great. Shadow that I came up with that looks very similar to it but is not identical is Phantom from Makeup Geek. Phantom is white shifting, or it's a duochrome, but it's a white shifting purple. I feel like that they are so close, you can achieve the same kind of look with them. You can see the way that it kind of has a purple hue to it. It's another alternative if you do like those duochrome shadows. The next shade is Dawn, and it's just a basic neutral transition shade. It's a gorgeous cream, but there's like a slight bit of peach or something to it. It's just my favorite shade to do transitions with, but I did find that the dupe for it is Angel Face from Colored Raine. They are super close. The only thing I find with Angel Face versus Dawn is that Angel Face actually keeps that kind of like peachy hue to it, whereas Dawn, like, it oxidizes or something. It just goes like a little bit darker on the lid or when you're blending it. Now it doesn't look like that in the swatch, but definitely when you blend it, this does kind of go a bit different. One of my favorite shades in the entire palette is this shade here, Destiny. It looks so plain and like nothing exciting, but it just, I don't know, every time I use this in a look, it just really creates like the best look. It's just so pretty. So that's it there. It just really ties a look together, especially if you're using an awful lot of greens. You don't even have to use like this whole palette, but if I'm using any kind of greens, Destiny, anytime I pop it into the look, it just really brings it together. It's quite nice. And the shade that I found that is very similar to it is Dirty Martini from Makeup Geek. That's Dirty Martini there, and that is the shade Destiny. I was like, what's it called? Destiny again does the same thing that I find most of the shadows do. They kind of go like a little bit darker or something once they're on the skin. I don't know why they do that, but I definitely think that Dirty Martini is the closest shade that I have in my collection anyway to it. They are so similar and they work amazing. The only thing I will say is I love Destiny so much, that color, but it's just one of those tricky ones to work with because you just don't know if you're going to get good pigmentation some days or bad, whereas the Makeup Geek ones, they work well every single time. Like, I love them. Believe it or not, but Adorn was actually one of the shades that I struggled to find a dupe for, and you would think because it's so basic, it's like a bronzy slight gold hue to it, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so simple to find a dupe for, but it really wasn't. It was actually quite tricky. Adorn is another favorite of mine in this palette, and I'll just swatch it there. I really need to clean up my hand. It's a beautiful, like I said, goldy kind of bronzy shade. There's just something amazing about it. And I did notice that from MAC, Amber Lights is very similar to it. My Amber Lights is so old and I've had it for years and years and years. Definitely not as pigmented. You get the same look from them. You may have to use this twice as much as you would with Adorn because it is just super pigmented. But there they are beside each other, and I just think that they work so well as dupes. Like they look identical. Well, to me they do anyway. The next shade that I want to talk about is All Star, so it's that shade there. And I found out that Cherry Cola from Makeup Geek is almost, if not identical. So that's what both of them look there, side by side. All Star is a shadow I struggle a little bit with when I'm using it, when I am trying to work with it on my eye. It looks so insanely pretty, but it just has a mind of its own, and sometimes it wants to blend out really nicely on my eye, and then sometimes I get a patchy kind of hot mess with it. It's not my favorite shadow, but I do love Cherry Cola. Oh my god, I love it. Gorgeous shade. So that's Cherry Cola on top, and that is All Star underneath. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous shades. They are just both amazing, but like I said, Cherry Cola performs just a little bit better on my skin. I just feel like it's easier to blend out on me as well. Next up, I want to talk about Mercury. It's not like my favorite shadow in the whole entire palette. It's very blah, but it's necessary, I suppose, for some looks. However, I do feel like this shade is quite easy to dupe. So I did find a couple of shades that were identical. What is glaring up at me? So the shade that I found that was very similar to it is Brownie Points from Makeup Geek, and I feel like they are almost identical. The only thing is Brownie Points, it's a lot sheer, so you kind of have to go in a few times and build it up. But once you do, you get something very similar. It's never going to be the same kind of pigmentation straight off the bat. So this is probably 3 times less pigmented as Mercury. I feel like Mercury is insanely pigmented, and so that's both of them side by side. So the final shadow on the top row is this one here called Axis. Now, this is the shadow that I found that was the closest to it. This is one of the hardest dupes that I ever had to get. So kudos to Anastasia Beverly Hills for creating pretty unique color. This is the closest that I got, and they're not identical. You can see that this one here, which is Peacock from Makeup Geek, is slightly more blue than Axis. But when I swatch them, they're not too unlike each other, but Axis is like in another league of its own. Like, wait till you see this. It is just beautiful. Like, it's gorgeous, and I couldn't find anything to dupe it. Like, I thought Plumage might look like it from MAC, but no, that looks the same as Peacock. Then I had one from Inglot, that's what it was, but no, it didn't look like it either. So you can kind of see that these two are not really that close, and you know, I couldn't exactly call them dupes. But I feel like if there was a little bit, tiny bit more black in this, or even using a black base, you'd kind of get the same look. So that's the only one that I'm really disappointed in, because it doesn't look exactly the same. But I did search high and low, and it's honestly impossible to dupe that shadow. I don't know, maybe somebody else has found one. Axis is one of my favorite shades in the palette. I think it's amazing. So the next row, we start off with Roxy, and Roxy is a gorgeous orange shade. Oh, impossible to work with though. It's just, it not that I know people keep saying, oh, these shadows oxidize, but this actually does. It gets that like a ring around the shadow. I just find that it's a bit difficult to work with. But I did notice that Rule from MAC is almost identical, like if not identical. They're very similar. Rule has been one of my favorite MAC eyeshadows for years and years and years. You do need to build up Rule, that's the only thing, to kind of get the same intensity as Roxy, but they're very similar. It's just, like I said, Rule's a tiny bit more sheer, but if you build them up, you will get the same intensity. If I use too much of Roxy, I kind of get like a weird edge, whereas I don't with Rule, so I definitely recommend Rule over Roxy. The next dupe is my favorite one, and the one I'm most proud of, and it's for Electric. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to dupe that, not from what I have in my collection, but I found one, and I'm so proud. So proud. So Electric looks like this. It is a beautiful shade, but one of those shadows you gotta dig into almost to kind of get any color payoff. That's what it looks like there. It is stunning. However, I discovered a dupe for it, and it's from Makeup Geek, and this is in my collection all along, and I've never used it, and now I'm kind of like, why have I never used that eyeshadow? Because it's just like Electric. This is Karma. I am so excited that this is a dupe, because this is a better dupe Look at that. They're identical. The pigmentation on Karma is out of this world, whereas the pigmentation from Electric is just not as good. I think that's the only shadow in this whole entire palette that's not as pigmented. I wouldn't have even found this only for I was on a mad rampage of swatching. They don't look like each other kind of in the pans, but you can see from the swatches that they are almost identical. So next up, I'm going to talk about Fudge. Fudge is another controversial shade in this palette. I feel like it's not as amazing as it should be. It looks great and everything, and it swatches out amazing, but once you put it on your eye, it can be a little bit patchy. That's the only disappointing side to it. And I did find that Mocha from Makeup Geek is almost, if not identical to it, and it is just as good a pigmentation, and there's a slight bit more warmth in Fudge, but I feel like Mocha works so much better on my eyes. I can get an identical look from it, and that's why I prefer to use it. The next one that I'm going to talk about is New Wave, another favorite of mine from the palette. I feel like this works so well on my eyes, so pigmented. I don't lose any of the pigmentation in this. It doesn't go funny on me. I don't get weird edges, nothing like that. It's a beautiful shadow and it works really, really well with me. It is almost like an orangey yellow and it's just perfect on the eyes. And the shadow that I found that is almost, if not identical to it, is Makeup Geek's Chickadee. There's so many Makeup Geek eyeshadows in this, but that's just the great thing about Makeup Geek, I suppose. There's so much variety. So that's what Chickadee looks like, and that's what New Wave looks like. Very, very, very similar, but I feel like once you use those in the eye, they're gonna just be identical. You won't be able to tell the difference, so I'm super happy with that. The next shadow I have here is Untamed, and this is a beautiful green, and I feel like this works quite well in my palette anyway. It's almost similar to the green that I'm wearing today. It's like an army green, and the shadow that I found that is quite similar to it is called Enchanted Forest from Makeup Geek again, and this one is like a little bit deeper, like a tiny bit deeper, almost, if not identical. I'm just gonna keep swatching down my arm here because we still have a bit of room. The next shade is Edge, and Edge is one that I again struggled with, but I think that I found a dupe for it. I'm not 100% sure what it's gonna look like on camera, but I will say that Edge has a tiny bit like more mustard yellow in it, so you can see how yellow that is, and then you can see like desert sands. I keep calling it desert suede, it's desert sand. They're another one that's kind of a funny dupe, but I feel like you could get ultimately the same look. I don't know, maybe just a little bit more of a deeper one with desert sands than you would with Edge. You know, they're not too unlike. And then the final shadow that I have here is Rowdy on the bottom, and this is like the deepest, darkest, most pigmented purple you've ever seen. Like, it's almost black, like almost. Look at that, like it's so beautiful. And I was like, again with that one, it's gonna be pretty tricky to find a dupe, but I believe that I may have found a dupe for it, and this is Taboo from Makeup Geek again. Makeup Geek has basically found all of the eyeshadows, so this one is just a little bit more purple, where there's a little bit more of a black base to the Anastasia one. There's a little bit more of a purple base to the shade Taboo. But I feel like if you looked at this on the eye, you wouldn't know which was which, if that makes any sense. Like they look almost identical. So there you go, guys. They're the dupes that I came up for the Subculture palette. Obviously, this is going to work out a little bit more expensive. Subculture palette is, I think, €54 now. $42 when I bought it, but it's still $42. It's just the conversion rates on like Cult Beauty and Beauty Bay and all them is just a little bit higher. Per eyeshadow from Makeup Geek, you're talking between €5 and €7 depending on what you're going for. Like these duochrome ones and the foil ones are a little bit more expensive. The ones from Coloured Raine are €10 a piece. The MAC eyeshadows like Amber Lights and Rule are, I think, €7. That's how much they are here in Ireland if you wanted to buy them in a pro pan. So there you go, guys. I think I did an okay job. Like I said, there was a couple of misses there just in regards to Axis in particular, Cube, and then a little bit with Edge as well. However, I think if there was a few shades from the Subculture palette that you actually liked that you could pick up, or maybe because Makeup Geek is so popular, I mean everybody has a lot of Makeup Geek shadows now, maybe some of them are in your collection already, maybe you didn't realise that they were very close dupes, and then maybe you'd like to check out some of the other shadows, maybe like MAC ones. Lots of people have MAC shadows as well from over the years. I had all these shadows in my collection already. I didn't buy any new ones for this video because obviously I didn't know. I just went swatching through my collection of what I had. This was a complete chance that I actually might have had all these, so therefore you might have these if you're like me and a massive collector of eyeshadows. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see that side-by-side tutorial, which might be helpful using both of these eyeshadows, do let me know. It didn't even occur to me until I was making this video to do that. But if you would like to see that, please thumbs up this video, let me know in the comment section. And yeah, I will talk to all you guys in my next video. I love you all so much. Mwah. Bye guys!